Hey everybody, we are the epistemologists here, and we are a bit on a warpath because we ran into some very interesting academics, and we want to kind of talk about him. We want to talk about philosophy. This might be a little bit longer, but I kind of intend to take some segments from this, maybe overall. So, that aside,
yes,
let's talk about Dan Dolson and C.W. Chanter. That's the other big guy here. But C.W. kind of more replied to us in video format. And please, you too, if you would like to get in a conversation and talk with us. I mean, we're working schlubs, so we kind of have tight schedules, but we would love to have you. We'd love to have a discussion, and it'd be great. I can't guarantee a live stream. I can't guarantee any of that, but at least a discussion, and I can guarantee that I will, only do sound editing, producing sort of thing. And you can verify that, and I can send you the file, all that sort of stuff. We'll do some verification, so you don't feel like we're taking your words out of context or pinning you to the wall. So, over the last, day or so, we've gotten into a bit of a beautiful Twitter engagement with really the academic side of Twitter. And this one person has really been emblematic of what we find is wrong in sort of the ivory tower of academia. And it's that he's not applying or explaining himself. He's going after and he's saying stuff like, look it up, here's the book, right? Which of course means nothing because the book can be interpreted many ways. So even if you have a picture of the text, which he did, even if you have a picture of the text, what does that mean? What does that mean to you? And here's what I think it means, and I think it has a logical conflict in it. So unless you address that logical conflict, you don't look that good.
Well, let's before we get into that.
Yeah.
I want to keep a distinction between people and ideas.
Yes.
So that we're more criticizing the ideas and not the people.
Right.
Just a general courtesy, and it's just the better way to move forward. We're a team, all of us.
Yep.
I don't like these debates that are more like battles.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to hammer on someone's position and they're trying to defend it and all that. Well, it's not so dramatic for me or us. It's more like a collaborative thing.
Yeah.
So this is really just an attempt to work out the logical conflicts, like what's going on in there.
Under ideal circumstances, but sometimes you throw something, in where it's just so bad. It's insulting to suggest that, for instance, we should pay attention only to the qualified authorities, and but that's not an assertion. That's not a logical fallacy of argument by authority. But if you there's only the argument by a false authority, which isn't true. Even if you were to say an unqualified authority, what is an unqualified authority? I lack that explanation.
They want to label it an unqualified authority. That's important to them because they're trying to find reliable sources.
Right.
As sort of a way to say that these people are generally exempt from the appeal to authority fallacy.
Yes. So if you mention, scientist X, who is a climatologist, then, of course, because scientist X knows, they would trump anyone else's speculation. They would trump anyone else's ideas. Their ideas would trump anyone, and which is what they're saying by saying an unqualified authority. As long as authority is qualified, and that's why it's important to define what unqualified means, or what. And they also talk about lack credibility. What
it's the same thing as it's the same thing as just what ideas are credible. and they figure out that certain sources are more reliable than others.
Yes.
So that's super important for them to figure out what are most likely to be credible ideas.
Yes.
There is a problem with that, though, and the problem is that sources are intrinsically unreliable. Like, you're never going to find a source that's actually or ultimately reliable. So you always have like the potential for them being wrong in some way for whatever reason.
Right.
And everyone will acknowledge that. So I don't think there's any contention with this. No one's omniscient here. But what these people do, that when they're looking for the feeling of certainty, they want the feeling of confidence. So they'll try to find the sources that make them feel that way.
Right.
Where the truth that they're looking for is really just that feeling. And that's not truth at all. It's a very different thing than having the truth. So our whole contention with that, the issue that we have with it, is just a nuanced difference in what to aim for. So they're aiming for the feeling of confidence. We're saying it's not a good idea. You should actually just seek better explanations instead, and the truth will kind of be teased out of the situation that way.
Right. You
can understand the truth better if you just aim for explanatory value, like analyzing the explanatory value of a theory. And in an objective way, you can come to the truth, even if you treat it as though you might not have the truth. The entire time you can act like a fallibilist and acknowledge that you might be wrong in some way, somewhere. And just having that is sort of a safeguard against insulating yourself against being wrong, right? So there's a lot wrong. Excuse me. You can take it from here. 1 second.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I wanted to get onto the fallibilist foundationalist, which is not a term that I had encountered before because...
Oh, I have.
Oh my God. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, there's all kinds of ways that people try to reconcile conflicts.
Yes.
Logical conflicts. So they'll try to create hybrid theories. Generally, some of it is just finding formulations that don't that kind of obfuscate the conflicts.
Yeah, hide the conflict.
Sometimes they actually create real, genuine solutions. But I think that there is a fundamental conflict between foundationalism and fallibilism.
You can't be a foundationalist. You can't be a fallibilist and a foundationalist because there is no foundation. And what the theory seems to be proposing is that we're just going to ignore that that we can't be a foundationalist and be a fallibilist. We have to start from somewhere, so we're just going to ignore it. And that seems to be the other way of addressing a logical conflict, which is you just ignore it. And you say, yes, I recognize that it is a logical conflict, but I'm going to ignore it for the sake of my own sanity.
It's like they just brought up the Munchausen trilemma in the article that you had referenced. Yeah. And the Munchausen trilemma, I've gone over it before, it's basically this trap that you get into if you're searching for the feeling of confidence. Yeah. If you're trying to find support for what you know, then you're invariably going to find yourself into a choice between three bad sort of ways to go. So one of those ways is just continually seeking validation in search of maybe an ultimate validation at some point. So justification upon justification. It's like reasons after reasons after reasons, or indefinite citations. Like you just keep searching for this ultimate justification that never comes, and so you're just going to keep searching. So that's one choice. Another choice is an infinite or a cyclical what do they call it? A logical. What am I thinking of? It's eluding me. It's a circular logic. There we are.
Yes.
So with circular logic, you're just going around and around. There may be many steps to it, but you come back to where you started because you can't really find the thing you're looking for. You're just going to continue working over the logic, always in search of this thing that never comes, the feeling of confidence or whatever else that you think you're looking for. The other one is an axiomatic option, the third option. An axiom is basically just deciding to end the search. You're just like, nope, this is it.
This is the end.
That's it.
And it
We're
seems
done.
like the fallibilistic foundationalist would say, well, because there is no way out of this if we're searching for truth, we should just give up and go with the most sensible one, which is foundationalism and by axiomatic. So we're saying, okay, this is it. This is the end. We're good. Everything's done. We're done.
Yep, all done. Sorry, I apologize. My cat is like going crazy right now.
Yeah.
So.
It's all right.
But yeah, so this guy appears to be falling into that trap and just sort of picking one of the options. But they really should have examined why they found themselves in that trap in the first place.
Yes.
Which was trying to search for the feeling of confidence. If you re-examine that, which is basically a premise, they don't want to touch it. But if you force them into it, they realize that there is a difference between the feeling of confidence and actually being correct.
Yes.
Just conceptually. They're totally different things. And often they're not even correlated in the slightest.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
You'll have like an expert opinion. It might be even consensus, scientific consensus. And you might have absolutely no correlation with the truth. Why is this? For multiple reasons. One reason is just science is hard, right? You might come up with a really good guess and everyone agrees in that guess, but it's just, we're all fallible. So there we are with a slightly wrong idea, but it's okay. Maybe it's mostly right anyway and still valuable. So I say this because of this whole thing with the two biggest theories in physics. General relativity, one of the biggest theories, two of the biggest theories, general relativity and quantum mechanics, in conjunction, form a theory that is problematic.
It has a logical conflict.
There's a logical conflict in there. I'm not an expert in what that conflict is because I'm not a physicist, of course.
Yeah.
But this conflict is well understood by many physicists. And this conflict marks the theory, the conjunction of the two, as problematic, which means it has zero probability of being true. Absolutely zero. And we know it. Yeah. But we still use the theory because it's still immensely valuable. It describes so much of what we know. It encapsulates so much of what we know that even though it has zero probability of being true, it's still a good theory. And we want it. We want to take it seriously.
It provides
so there is absolutely no correlation there between the truth and what a good explanation is in this case.
It provides
this is just one of many examples.
Explanation of what's going on without being correct. In that we talk about, the fact that you kind of have to you're tricking people, right? You're tricking yourself into understanding what it is. And I suppose there might be a little bit of kernel of truth in that foundationalist, fallibilist. But no, that's not true at all. Never mind. I was going to add, because that's looking for truth. You can assume something's true hypothetically without, believing that it's true, without expecting that it needs to be true.
Yep, that's true. But the other thing that I wanted to point out is that you can have scientific consensus in the scientific community, which is by and large a bunch of career scientists and researchers who are under economic pressures, financial pressures. They need grants. They need funding. There are so many reasons why a big industry, like the energy industry, for instance, might want them to embellish certain ideas and avoid other ideas. Lots of reasons. And this is not even all that surprising. Under these pressures, you can be kind of ostracized as a scientist if you take out of the mainstream view. I think this is well understood. So the idea that scientific consensus correlates with the truth is essentially nonsense at the bottom of it. Even if there are some circumstances where that would correlate. There are some circumstances where you could actually see that scientific consensus would correlate with the truth, but it all boils down to individual choice. Whether the individuals involved really want those two things to correlate. Right?
Yeah.
And so if all of these distractions come in the way, like say they're not too keen on philosophy in general because they're a scientist and they think philosophy is a waste of time. So they basically adopt a bad philosophy without much examination. And then they'd go and do their science like by the textbook, word for word. And then they go through, then they do the motions, the scientific process,
yep.
And they expect credibility to come from all of this. And yeah, we've gone into Never Never Land.
Yeah. So you might want to check your Twitter notifications.
Do I really want to check that?
You've gotten some good ones, and I want to see how you'll respond.
Oh no.
So I want to talk a little bit about CW and his magnificent sort of straw man argument. First of all, when we say that the appeal, he's using the wrong appeal to authority, he's not understanding what we're saying. We're not saying you shouldn't trust experts. Well, I mean, we are saying you shouldn't trust experts, but it's not like you shouldn't include them. And oftentimes, experts will have the best explanations. They should
trust the good explanations they espouse.
Yeah, if they can,
and in that way, you're trusting the expert, right? But
yeah.
It's really the good explanation you're trusting, and not them by proxy, right?
Right. Just saying that we should have this scientist that's a combustion expert look at these things does not necessarily mean. I totally agree. But, saying that as a means to stop the speculation of what's happening is silly. Why would that stop the speculation? And there might be good things that come out of the speculation. You might get better questions and better understanding of what to ask, what may or may not be going on. Even if they're completely wrong, you might ask a question that really illuminates what's going on for yourself and for others. Whereas if you just wait for the experts to finish their report, you don't have any questions at the end of the report. You don't have any idea of what's going on. You don't, you don't have any thoughts about what may be going on.
You're just kind of an empty vessel for their opinion. And you don't actually fully understand what their opinion is, maybe on the surface.
Yeah.
But unless you really go over it, like you would if it's yours, if you're owning that explanation, then you're thinking through it. You're actually thinking for yourself.
Yes.
And at that point, you'll find problems if you keep searching. If you keep searching with a genuine skepticism, because these ideas are fallible. So just adopting them because they came from an expert makes no sense. And so C.W. Chanter is talking about how does that mean you should reject your oncologist's advice? On the matter, and that's insane.
Of course,
right?
Yeah,
because that's a total strain on what we're trying to. Basically, he's just knocking down something that we're not saying.
Yes, which is the straw man argument.
Our argument is that these experts do have good explanations. That's why we consider them as experts, and we expect them to espouse them.
Yes.
And if we hear them, we should recognize they're good just by analyzing them on their explanatory value, not from where they came from, right?
Yep.
So those explanations can spread across a population. Is everyone in that population an expert? No, but the good explanation gets around anyway. We should be able to grab on to that explanation, regardless of where it came from. You heard it from Hobo John, right? And from you don't know where he got it. Where did that originate? You don't know, but it's still a good explanation. And you can tell through a static analysis of that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where it comes from. And we're not saying reject it. We're saying, listen, work through the logic, think for yourself.
We're also not saying you should accept any explanation that comes by. You should accept an explanation that helps you understand what's going on, and might encompass more facts or more things that you didn't understand before, or how things fit in before. It's a process.
It can only help.
Yeah,
it can only help. It illuminates some mysteries, figure out what's problematic, what doesn't make sense. We can't always see every contour, right? So if we collaboratively approach that, we might actually get there. So, yeah, I'm having either allergies or a cold or something. I don't know what it is.
Oh, I don't know.
So I sound kind of annoying, but that's just par for the course.
All right.
But
so
listening to CW Chanter's video, I just want to say is just like really hard to do because he just goes off and you can follow him down that train. Sure.
Yeah.
It's just this stream of consciousness and you're chilling. He's good at that. So, but the thing is that he's not fully paying attention to what these crazy sounding people are saying.
Yes.
Like people talking about directed energy weapons. Oh man, they must be crazy. Look at all these reasons why they might be crazy. There's other explanations, maybe, yeah. But he doesn't actually give an explanation for some of the things that Cliff High was pointing out. Like, why is the aluminum melting out onto the asphalt that isn't even touched at all?
Well, his explanation is we should trust the experts.
Yeah, we're just waiting, I guess. He wants to shut down the speculation engine, but it's okay if we're wrong.
Yeah.
Right? It's okay. Like, it's not a scary thing. Being wrong is a crucial and necessary part of the knowledge building process. There's no way around it. There's no reason to disparage it or think that speculation is garbage. It makes no sense. It is okay to have a rumor mill. It is okay, and actually even more beneficial than having this meticulously monopolized scientific or academic knowledge building structure that is totally beholden to the line of resources, the supply line.
Because you get more out of it. You get more viewpoints, more ideas, and some of them might be good. Some of them might need a lot of refining, but still are in their essence good. And.
Yeah, I mean, open source information, open source knowledge building. That really works. We know it works because we do it all the time in software. And software, you have to get really meticulous. It's got to be rigorous. You can't have sloppy handling of edge cases, like for instance fallibility. Like fallibility is an edge. The being wrong, we'll say, is the edge case. Sometimes it happens. We can acknowledge that. The way to properly handle that is to not ignore it. You don't ignore the edge cases.
Yes.
They will create bugs in your thinking.
Edge cases are If you know of a logical conflict that ruins your theory, you should probably be reconsidering your theory and looking for a better one.
But these people want to ignore
because
that particular margin of error because it distracts from their mission, which is to find the feeling of confidence.
Yep.
Whether you get down to it or not, they want confidence, and that's why they look for evidence. That's why facts mean something to them, is because it makes them feel like they can be confident in something. That is the reason why, and they should acknowledge that.
And if if you've watched our videos, I think we have some in-depth ones on what we mean by facts are important to them, but not necessarily important to us. But let's go over that quickly.
It's a roundabout.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I mean is that you have an initial aim on what you want to strive for, what your goal is, what your mission is, And people essentially aim for things that we don't, right?
Yeah.
They aim for the feeling of confidence, evidence, fact-based thinking, and all of that. Basically, expecting that your premises support your conclusion rather than actually just leading to a conclusion, and I think words matter. They're looking for this thing, but we're actually just looking for good explanations. What explains this thing? Even if it's crazy sounding, at least, it's a thing that might be interesting. So the aim is totally different. We totally disagree on what the goal is.
Yeah.
Epistemically.
Yeah. We want to explain the facts. We don't want to collect them, because it's like they miss out an important step of the process, which is...
Yeah, they're putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
The horse, what you should lead with is the explanation.
Yes.
What comes behind it is the truth.
Yes.
But what they're doing is they're putting that cart, the truth, in front of the horse.
Yes.
And acting as if the explanation follows from the truth, but it doesn't.
It does not. No, it does not.
It does not.
If that were
so, this is a nuanced argument, and I understand that when we say things boldly, it can kind of get reduced down to something that sounds crazy.
Yes.
Sounds totally wrong. How could you possibly think that? Right?
Yes.
And what happens is then we get lumped into a category, like Chanter, like put the crazies aside and, basically not listen to the noise they make.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And he's ironically doing this thing we say is a problem. Without he should basically just be okay with wild speculation.
Yep.
You don't need to believe any of it.
No.
To entertain it.
Yeah,
right.
And you can even critique it and say, well, maybe it's not entirely this because these reasons that I've figured out, or maybe you just ignore it. You don't have to pay attention to everything, man. If you're going crazy, maybe you need to take a break.
Yeah, he went. Yeah, so these people were driving him crazy. These crazy sounding people, including Fi, including me.
Yeah.
These crazy sounding people. Now, I didn't really step into the directed energy weapon thing directly.
No, we were just talking about an argument of authority.
And I think it's just means it makes no sense to just knee-jerk dismiss, the idea that directed energy weapons, which do exist, and Chanter would agree, basically could have been used. Now, one of his thing is, well, if they can be used, they might not necessarily want to use it. Why would anyone care to light California on fire? He went on to this emotional argument, do they want to
kill people or whatever?
Kill the people, or do they not like fine wine or oranges, do they not like Malibu or whatever? Yeah. And he goes off and well, he's not listening to all the ideas regarding
which is interesting because he mentions the California Rail, which is an interesting idea. I don't know if I subscribe to it, but if you're gonna one of the biggest things about, I don't know if Chanter knows this, but one of the big things about getting public transit across long distances is you're going over people's property, and they have the right to refuse to sell. If everything's burned to a crisp, well, they might be more willing to sell.
Could be a land grab, and so people are speculating on what they might want in the land, and there's a lot of possible things that people want in the land, and there might not be a lot of facts to go around either. But the speculation doesn't hurt either, because once you have a guess, you have something to test, and that can lead to better constrained ideas, right? You'd never be able to get to that constrained idea if you just reject the initial guess. If it sounds crazy or by whatever metric you choose, it didn't come from an expert. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say it didn't come from an expert. So it's got to be hogwash. So let's just write it off and continue down our line of thinking.
And hell, I get the idea of I want to ignore everything until the experts come and they say something, more constrained than wild speculation. I can understand that idea, but you don't have to go out and say you are wrong. You have to wait for the expert. Sit there and wait for the expert.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's assume for the sake of argument that Chanter is correct, that we should really only, accept what experts say about their field specifically.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That matters. And well, fortunately, we happen to be experts in programming.
Yep.
That's what we do for a living. We're experts in software engineering. And what happens if you do this abject dismissal of a guess, even if it seems wrong, when you're programming? Then you don't solve the problem. Every single time you're hitting your head against the wall and you're like, why does this not work? And the computer's basically doing this thing you're not expecting constantly until you go back and address one of your assumptions. Every time. Every time.
Because all a computer does is read the instructions that you give it and then do those instructions very fast. So
it's very quickly telling you you're wrong.
Yes.
All the time. Software programmers have got calluses.
Yes.
For being told they're wrong. Because, we're wrong all the time. It just makes total sense that we're fallible.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't make sense that you would take this idea that seems initially crazy or bad or whatever, and to fail to continue to take it seriously.
Yes.
Like to fail to continue investigating.
Yeah.
And then eventually be surprised. Oh my God. Imagine being surprised you were wrong. Imagine. Well, it happens all the time in software engineering.
Well, it should happen
all the time. We're experts on that. We're experts on this.
It really happens.
So he should just trust us. He should just trust us, right?
Yeah,
that makes total sense.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I forgot you were presupposing his argument was true.
I had to come back full circle, man.
Oh, God. Okay. Okay. I wanted to look. Do you want to incorporate reading some of the tweets and responding to them, or that we have gotten, or do you want to?
I could. I was reading them. A lot of these tweets can be a little bit like not immediately easy to digest.
Yeah. Well,
especially when you're speaking with academics, they really like to prove their credentials by dropping names and books and citations, and they're used to doing that, I guess. I don't give a crap about any of it.
Yeah.
So I just gloss over it. I'm just like, this guy is not explaining.
Discuss ideas.
He's throwing a book at me. I'm not going to go read the book.
No.
I write in tweets. I do 20-minute videos. This one might be an exception at this rate. I mean, I don't know what we're on.
We're on 30.
Maybe we'll go over an hour.
Oh, maybe. But I
try
weird.
to keep it concise and lucid.
If you are a professor,
I'm not dropping names and dates and crap.
If you are a professor and you're listening to this, if you're a professor and you're listening to this of anything in your field, you should be able, if you have a PhD, you should be able to explain to anyone what is going on in a good enough picture where they can generally understand what you're saying. And they don't have any questions or concerns, or, they say, oh, what do you mean by this? You should be able to answer all of that. I asked this professor, what do you mean by an unqualified authority? What does that mean? He has yet to answer what that means. Is he actually interested in teaching, or only in a particular context where the students are just mindlessly accepting what he's saying? I
guess. He's just parroting out of a book, so he's doing the same thing.
So he can't be wrong because the book is the authority. Yeah,
can we roll that back a bit? Like, is it possible that the author could be mistaken about something, that they don't examine everything either?
No.
Is it possible?
Nothing in a book is ever
published.
Wrong. Nothing
it was published
can ever be wrong. Remember that. Nothing published can ever be wrong.
Well, here's the thing. So for those of us don't immediately accept that premise, right? People like this guy is not going to be compelling to us.
No.
I mean, we're telling specifically, we're looking for good explanations.
Yep.
If that's what he's providing, it's not going to work. Well, like, maybe he even senses this because he's not really engaging all that much.
Yeah. Well, there was that other guy who was talking. He was doing a very long scientific methody, very very long-winded. But generally, we got to a consensus and we got an idea. I got an idea of what he's saying, and generally, I agreed. He
Yeah, and you can sense people's desire to come to a sort of common understanding. That's generally the right energy. But you get these people who have this sort of hang up around the things that they've decided are true.
It's so easy if you have the credentials to flaunt them. Right? There's such an egotistical
you can write a whole page
where you can
write a whole page on your website where you go down your litany of
credentials and blah 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 and
degrees, pieces of paper people have signed, and
we're saying that means nothing.
The dissertation you worked on.
If he has all those credentials, I expect him to wipe the floor with me. I expect him to come in and
where is the good explanation?
My argument.
Where's the argument?
To come in, destroy me, man. Like I want to see it. I like that's good. I want to see. I want to change my view. I want to look at what you're saying and understand it. But what you're giving me is books of random people, and you're not describing why they're good. You're not describing why their arguments are good or why I should take this into consideration. You're just saying read the book and it will tell you all. What the hell is that?
So I'm glad you also tagged David Deutsch in the argument, because he's actually one of the more prominent people that come from academia who has really run into this problem.
Yeah.
In academia, that they just drag their feet on everything. Even within their circles, there's really very little consensus if you look closely.
Yeah.
People just, it's okay. Disagreement is actually a good sign, to be honest.
Yeah.
You don't even really want consensus. It's actually a bad sign.
And
that's
if you disagree,
climate change. It's actually a really bad sign.
If you disagree, that means you have a different perspective, and there's something wrong. That with either your own understanding, with either your own understanding or the understanding of the group, of the consensus, and that's good. You want that, because that can add and create a better consensus, can create a better idea of what's going on.
Yeah,
either for yourself or for the group.
To put it in other words, consensus can also be a sign that people are just told to shut up.
Yes,
and just agree.
Which in the case
there
of
could
climate,
be a gun to their head.
Which is in the case of climate change.
Well, so I'm not saying these things are true with the situation regarding climate change.
Yeah.
It looks fishy to me, right?
Yeah, there's some fishy
and I think
things.
it explains the consensus. It explains the consensus. It doesn't make it probable, but it does explain it, and that's all I'm looking for.
Yep.
Again, I'm not looking for whether it's true. I just look, hey, it does explain that, and I don't immediately reject it.
It's weird. It's weird to find, such a strong consensus at reported numbers. I mean, it'd be hard to say.
It's statistically improbable.
Yeah, and then you get into the things where the climate is such a complex system. We can't even predict things that are going to happen a few days out. To say that you've noticed such a massive change. And they talk about core samples and all that sort of stuff. That it's such a complex system. It's hard to know. And as a programmer who understands systems, the larger and more complex a system is, the more it's like the
easier bugs hide.
Yeah. The more it's like you're looking at a tangled string, and you pull on one end, and something way on the other side of it, gets tugged, right?
So let's say that there's a huge, rich data set around climate change, and what if some layer in there is filtering data? They're cherry picking certain data sets out of that, subsets.
Yeah.
What if that's happening? Like, why wouldn't some pressured or leveraged group that's in control of the operation be interested in doing that? I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah. I'm not saying this is what's happening, but we've seen some weird things in the USGS data, very like either errors. Yeah. It looks like errors, potentially. But we don't have the full picture necessarily.
There are certainly
we can't sample everything.
Strange radar artifacts in, I think, NOAA, in the National Atmospheric Administration data sets in their radar. There's some really interesting, weird artifacts there too. I mean, there's this whole saying with the foundationalists that the numbers don't lie. Well, that's true, but only about the numbers. The interpretation of the numbers is what's the important part, because you can say, well, this is because of this. The numbers don't lie. Well, the numbers are true, but your interpretation isn't necessarily true.
Yeah, because every interpretation of that data depends on a theory to interpret it. And that theory is always fallible. I'm sorry, but the data doesn't come first. The guesswork around the data comes first, because every theory starts as a guess.
Yes.
That's just how it is.
The speculation
Every idea
of the data
starts as speculation.
Yep.
It makes no sense to disparage that fact.
And it only...
Embrace it.
Yeah.
Use it. It
Use
can be
it.
exploited. And that's what the scientific method actually does when it's used properly.
Yes.
It exploits that fact. So it basically, that when science is done correctly, they're actually using the fact we're wrong sometimes. And if you don't use the fact we're wrong sometimes, you just get the appearance of being correct. Don't actually build knowledge.
Yes.
That's just how it works. So what's interesting is that we have all this alleged voter fraud going on right now. Speaking of points of data that are getting cherry picked.
Yeah.
People are always concerned about the electronic ballots, with good reason.
Yeah.
Especially those of us with distrust of the authorities handling.
Well, and
who is engineering these things, right? What are they actually? How do they actually work? It's a total black box. It should be opened up.
Yeah.
We should be able to look over the code and see what it's doing. It makes sense to put the thing on the blockchain as maybe some sort of smart contract or something. Maybe we'll get there. I'm pretty sure people are working on that. But open that thing up, right? Open it up so we can understand the process, or we're left to speculate.
Yep.
We're left to inject ideas about things that are roughly conspiratorial in nature.
Yeah. Because
right? This is really important that we count these up correctly.
Right. So if they leave it as a closed box system, if it's not an open source system, they are going to reap what they sow, and people are going to say, well, I don't trust that system. If they, however, say, oh, you don't trust the system, well, get a friend, get somebody who knows computer science, or yourself, learn computer science and look at the system. Here it is. You can see we're not adding anything to it. It's just a very simple thing that counts things and sends it through the network.
It's an immutable program.
Yeah.
It does the same thing every time. You can tell what it does.
Yeah.
And it's not dependent on people. And it's a good solution. But people are going back to paper ballots, there's no electronic solution, just because we had these private corporations build proprietary machines that doing we don't know what they're doing. No. And there's really, I doubt there's really any audit that can be.
Of course not. Yeah.
Either regulators are just okay, it's just more theater.
Yeah. But it's easy to have a regulator either be incompetent and not be like an engineer, right? So an auditor who comes in and doesn't understand software engineering, you can hide something in there still if they don't understand the code really well. Hell, if I went in to a private company's code, right, that is probably a massive tangle, and if they wanted to really obfuscate what they're trying to do, they could probably get something by me. They could probably get a parameter by me. Right? I'd really have to study it for, a year or weeks on end, right? In order to understand what's going on. If it's open source, we can crowdsource it. We can get somebody who really understands it very well and who can really parse through it all. And it's probably more liable to be simpler, in all honesty. But that's more like a tendency and less of an absolute.
Yeah, well, it's kind of silly that the paper system is widely considered to be somehow more secure than an electronic solution.
Yeah.
Just because electronic solutions can simulate paper, and more. They can do They can do it in many, many different ways. But at least with the electronic solution, you have close tabs on the process.
Right.
do we have a close tab? Do you personally have a close tab on where your ballot went after you dropped it in the mailbox?
I didn't even.
After you if you go out to the polling place and you hand it to that person, you trust the person.
Yeah. Do you really trust that person? You don't even know them like most of the time, unless you're like in a small town or something. If you live in a city, you don't know. I didn't know the person I handed my ballot to. You know,
it's probably a volunteer.
Yeah, which is great. But you know, how can you trust that person? What if they're not? What if they are nefarious? Right.
Yeah. So there's really no explanation for how we should trust them either.
Yeah.
So like it goes into some black box right now as is, and it goes through multiple like little ballot boxes or Avis car rental.
Oh my God.
Wherever it goes.
Yeah, into tombs of Egypt and
they're
back.
finding ballots wherever they want to find them.
Yeah.
Really. Like, I just found a ballot right under my pen.
Wow. Amazing.
It's insane. So this is just an extension of the issue with authority as a trustable source.
Yeah.
As long as it's a black box. The thing is with good explanation is it opens up the box.
Yes.
At least theoretically.
Yeah.
And it gives us something to test. So the theory is really only, scientific when it's falsifiable. So if it's making testable predictions, maybe it's a good idea to go and test those. But you're never going to bother doing that if you just dismissed it at the theory level.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's actually what we do as software engineers. We're experts at this. We do this all the time. And it's extremely important that we do it quickly.
Yes.
We're under a lot of pressure to complete business goals. So we've got this iteration process down pat. And this is why I put a name on it. It's called the constraint cycle.
Yeah.
And we've done several videos now.
Yeah. We have to do a snippet, a couple of snippets for it, but we will be doing we have done many videos on it. I think like 3 or so. There's been plenty of videos around the topic. We talk about it a lot. It's an idea that we really like, and we're refining as much as we can. We're iterating as fast as we can over it, which is a computer science term, and it means we're looking it over again and again and again. We come back to it, right? Like a novelist or a when you're writing a paper, you're reading through your paper to make it good. You're revisiting it. You're looking at it at different times and finding all the problems with it and rearranging this over here and doing all the things, working on it. You're working on it.
Yeah, and I mean it's not so interesting to me that I collect decorations for my resume. It's not that interesting because I'm at the world solving real problems. Yes. There's an objective difference between failing to solve a problem and actually solving a problem.
Well, and
we get used to that.
This is with the fallibilist foundationalism, coming back around to that again. That seems to me like a debate on not solving a problem, ignoring a problem, and instead, having your name associated with that new ignoring the problem solution. And that's not a very good solution. If you're ignoring a problem, it's not a good solution. I think we can all agree to that. So
just looking the other way.
Yeah.
For whatever reason.
Because that's what that's doing.
I mean, there's all kinds of problems, and sometimes we prioritize some problems over other problems, but we should at least acknowledge they're there.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to like
a theory that says, "Oh no, just formally ignore the problem." If you ignore the problem and you're like, "Yeah, this is a problem. I don't know how to fix it, but I don't have the time to fix it." That's understandable. But
it happens all the time.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
That's why we're left with this unified theory of physics that doesn't make any sense right now. But we're all like dead set on using it.
This is a formalized, theory, which is mind-blowing to me.
I'm hold on one second. I'm being a little hyperbolic because I'm like juiced up, but it's still like that's just my disclaimer. like I might just go a lot and like say everything is terrible.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I'll be sure to clip you out just saying that over and over again for the rest of the for the entire video.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, just the context up.
All of the hyperbolic things, I'm gonna just take them out of context and just say this is what Isaiah thinks.
Well, you'll practice your editing skills. I guess something good will come out of it.
That was painful. But it's mind blowing to me that this theory exists and that somebody postulated it and as part of their decorations. Like, why is this a good idea? Why is it a good idea to ignore the fundamental problem of trying to seek for truth or certainty? It's mind blowing. You should have left certainty by the wayside long ago. That's the whole point. Is that certainty? You're never going to be certain of these things, but. And this is the very important part. You can have a good understanding that is crafted over time that gives you a very solid foundation. Not foundation. I don't want to use the word. A very solid.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I try?
Yes.
Because you said you never can be certain, but I think it is possible to be certain, just because it's a feeling.
Okay.
So. Like, you're looking at certainty from their point of view, I know, but this is
so we're changing.
This is important.
You're changing.
This is important because certainty is just a feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
and what they're looking for is that and they want to be confused.
Yes.
They want to confuse it for the truth.
Yes.
Routinely.
Yeah.
But that's not exactly the right kind of deception we want. We want the kind of deception that leaves us with a better understanding of the way things are. That's the kind of trick we want to be deceived by.
Yes.
And that's what good explanations do.
Yes. So in my thing, they're looking for certainty as an extension of feeling good about oneself and having the truth and being right. They want to be certain so they can be right. You should be certain in your explanation. You should be certain in what you know, what you have as a good explanation. If you put out something out there and you can explain every little part of it, right? Even if somebody goes and says, "Oh, you messed up here. This is a bad thing right here." That's good because now you have a better understanding of what's happening.
Yeah, allow your confidence to falter. It's not actually a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's a sign that you found something interesting.
Well, gain confidence. Seek your ability to understand, to explain better. Seek the ability to explain things better to yourself and hopefully as well to others.
Well, it makes it readily shareable.
Yes.
If you're doing it to yourself, like you're trying to explain things internally.
Yeah.
You get to something that makes sense to you, and you can explain it to others sort of subsequently, and so that actually helps us all.
And that's kind of why I like this format between us, is because I can try to explain something to myself, but if I'm explaining something to you, there's a difference in the way that we're going to explain things, and it can help refine, because we're working it between us, it can help refine that explanation further. And so.
Well, we don't really belabor our credentials or anything. There's various things that we might say, the background information about ourselves that just kind of come up in conversation.
Yeah.
But we basically don't do much to talk about who we are that much. If people are interested, that's fine. But what's interesting to us is the ideas generally.
Yes.
They work in practice. It's really important to get out of the academic mindset. Really, really important, because you got to go down the whole process of constraining your ideas, and they don't really get out of the whole their goal is to create something that someone else approves.
Yes.
That's their goal.
Yeah.
And
that
how are
not, you? Yeah.
That why how are we? If someone else approves it because it's they agree with it, that's fine. But what if, if they disagree, that's bad. That's bad for you. They're going to mark your paper down. Right? But that's a sign that something is off, right?
Yeah, that's terrible.
There's so many things wrong about the whole system. It's gameable. It's it's sort of a kind of entrapment.
Well,
where you must follow the line of thinking, or
you're
punished
wrong
for it.
Yeah, you're punished for not following in their line of thinking. It's terrible. I want to point out though that this is the current state of academics as it seems to be right now. There seems to be this big trap here. So that's number one. The second point is I think that the way that people have been, academics or these people who have accumulated a bunch of whatever, credentials seem to be, is they don't use any of the philosophy. This person that's talking with us doesn't seem to have any knowledge of the conflict, which leads me to believe that he doesn't really use the philosophy at all. Or at least in terms of the foundationalism, or fallibilist foundationalism, he doesn't use it in a way
he's coming across like a proxy for his textbooks.
Yeah. He's just arguing what his textbooks are. And then I'm just arguing against whatever, Robert Audi or whoever, right? And he doesn't, or the logic textbook, the Hurley or whatever his name is. I mean, he's not Hurley, so I can't critique him. I can't critique Hurley because Hurley's not there, and you are unwilling to explain it in your own words. So how are you using your philosophy? You have,
it's really bad.
If you're unwilling,
there's so many different goals that get you farther with much more productivity. You're actually able to learn so much about a given thing just by adopting the fallibilist's logic, which is to continually solve the problems that arise, especially the explanatory problems, because that'll get you everywhere. Because you can explain anything. Yeah. Really.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to seek the explanation to yourself, to understand. And what I mean by that is, I asked him, I mentioned this before, I asked him what a part of his theory that he's presenting as a fallacy, a logical fallacy, meant. And he did not provide me an answer. If he's unable to provide me an answer, then he doesn't have I don't know if he has an understanding of it, and he's not going to give me an understanding of what the answer is. He's just going to say, it's in this book, now you must accept it. And
well, this is just another side effect of not looking for good explanations.
Yeah.
Which is apparently what he's trained to do. He's not trained to look for those. He's trained to look for being able to
quote a book, quote somebody, cite, or know the basic framework of a philosophy. And that's that's all well and good, but it doesn't give you the depth needed to actually engage in a philosophical pursuit.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. And it's insane that Chanter would think we're insane because he's not listening to the actual argument.
Yes,
he must actually believe that we think that it's important to reject someone's expertise, which is absolute insanity. And he's correct. That is insane.
Yeah.
And so now we've been attributed to that.
Yeah. Which is unfair. Unfair.
We can talk about it. I mean, we can respond in this way too. So he can do what he wants.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, yeah.
But so can we. So we're
doing
so we're recording a response.
Yeah. Anyway, well, so I feel like we have we're starting to repeat ourselves a little bit, so I feel like we're getting into, a good stopping point, I guess.
Yeah, sounds good.
We are the epistemologers. Like and subscribe and talk about our crazy long video and how much you hated it. And I guess if Mr. Dolson is listening, you may have the last word.